Welcome everybody to another live stream repair. We've got ourselves two HomePods today that have been sent in. One of them has no power, and the other one pops and restarts. So, let's go ahead and start with the easy one, no power. Here we go. Right. Let's see if we can get this unwrapped here. I'd like to reuse this paper if I can. Did a very good job of keeping the original box together. Go. Get that out of the way. And very good, they taped the lid of the box to the bottom too, so we'll go ahead and cut that tape. And let's get that pulled out. Already got a note here. Yep. Easy peasy. Cable was properly packed on the bottom there, so very good job on that too. Not sure I've seen this much attention to packing and shipping on any other one yet. This is very good. Alright, and we've got no power, the usual couple of watts at the wall. So let's go ahead and tear into this one. Got our plastic spudger, not plastic, but you know what I mean. Let's get this out of the way. It almost looks like this has a screen protector on it too. There we go. Let's get our display taken out here. Too easy. Get that display out of the way. And we kept the plastic frame adhesive on here in perfect condition. Very good. Let's continue by getting this frame and logic board out. Got that frame out of the way. Got our logic board out of the way. Let's get our base out. There we go. Let's get this basket taken out. whose pod was this? This was... There we go. Now we know whose pod is whose while we're working on them on camera. Actually, I've got a better idea. What if I take... Alright, we don't need it that big. Here we go. I like that better. Now I don't have to waste sticky notes. We got all those screws taken out, so let's commence the pry. Alright, we should be able to pry this off now. It's basically already done. There we go. Let's get these subwoofer screws out so we can get inside. Where's that diode? It's got date code 1748K on that diode. You can't see it. But we've got the devil's diode in here. I guess for fun we'll check that it's actually shorted. Yep, that's dead. Let's go ahead and get this power supply and amp board out so we can replace that diode on the amp board. Alright, got our amp board out. Let's go ahead, replace that diode. go. Out with the old, in with the new. Very good. Let's give that a clean. All right, nice and clean. Let's throw this pod briefly together to test for some DC offset. Okay, let's boot this up and see if we've got any DC offset, and of course if our no power works, or if our no power repair worked. We've got power. Give me just a second here. Let's check for DC. And that looks really good. Looks like we've got no offset. That's very good. Let's go ahead and throw this pod fully back together and move on to the next one. I think I heard my phone go off. Let me check that. Ah, there we go. That's sit on there nice and neat. Last one. All right. Alright, we got that all back together again. Let's power it on and see if everything's lined up right and sealed properly. We're going to save the sound tests until the end. My wife is sleeping right now, so I don't want to wake her up. But we can see if everything is at least lined up.
I'm having trouble.
Ooh. Yeah, it works.
I'm having trouble connecting.
Jeez, that's loud. Alright, number one is fixed. Set that to the side. And let's break out our second unit for repair today. This one should power on, but it pops and restarts. So let's see what it does. All right. It's asking for setup, so we'll go ahead and do that. Let's let that set up. Should be done any second now. There we go. Now that that is set up, let's go ahead and let's Let's just see if we've got any base really quick. We do have base, but it seems pretty weak. So I bet you, as soon as I unplug this, it'll probably pop pretty loud. Ooh, that was a healthy pop. Yeah, let's take this one apart and see how much offset we've got on the woofer. And we got that out of the way. Let's get the display off. Lovely. Display is out of the way. Let's get this frame and logic board out. Alright, we got that all out of the way. Let's get our base. Set that down. Pull down our mesh. There we go. Now we can get this top basket off. This one's putting up a fight. Doesn't help that it's really hot here and I'm sweating my ass off. We're going to slide this mesh down some more, and we're going to hit this with some heat. Alright, let's see if that helps us at all. There we go. There we go. That was really difficult for some reason, but we managed. Yeah, it's my pleasure, Grover. I love working on these things. And I know I can understand how much enjoyment. These are just good speakers. So getting one working again is always worth it. Always a good time. Let's get the subwoofer. And since we are dealing with popping and DC offset issues, we're just going to peak that coil. Voice coil looks good. Smells good. Good news. Looks like their subwoofer is still good. So we'll go ahead and continue with disassembly so we can get that amplifier board out and check it for DC offset and give that the usual repair. Very good, we got that amp board out. Let's go ahead, throw this back together really quick to test and see how much DC we've got on that woofer. Alright, we got everything connected. Let's boot this up and see what we've got. Yeah, I was actually really surprised that I was able to fix not one, but two different logic board issues. Both of them ended up being different capacitors on the logic board that had shorted out. And the first one I used flux to find out where the cap was shorted out. The second one I used rubbing alcohol. I don't have a thermal camera, so that's what I got right now. It was interesting. I think I'm still trying to find reball stencils for the A8 CPU and the NAND. I bought one off eBay from a seller and they canceled the order and said that they didn't have any more, so that sucked. So I'm still looking for some. My idea is to simply get a logic board with the blinking volume issue and just try to pull the NAND and CPU off, reball those, and reinstall the same chips back onto. Well, actually what I'll do, I've got a board here that boot loops, and I've got a board here with flashing volume buttons. So what I want to do is try moving just the CPU between the two first and seeing what happens. And then I'll swap the NAND chips between the two and see what happens after that. So that'll be interesting to see. It will take quite a bit of practice for me to be able to extract these chips because it's really tricky. I think so far I've just used too much heat and I haven't regulated my heat well enough, and I'm probably killing the chips trying to get them off. So I gotta get better at that. Alright, well, enough yabbering. How much DC do we have on here? It's already off the millivolt scale. We're at 300 millivolts, and we're already at 320, 330, 340, 350. You know what we're gonna do? Since this is my subwoofer, and it's probably not going to kill anything else on the board, let's go ahead and let's just let this sit for a minute and see how high we can get it. Let's see how high it gets. $560 now. I'm just gonna make sure it stays awake on occasion. $630, $640, $650. 660 already. We've only had this powered on for a minute or so, and we're almost, well, we're past 2/3 of the way to 1 volt now. Interesting. Let's see, do we wait and see how high this goes, or do we just say screw it and jump into the repair? I kind of want to sit around and wait and see how high this actually gets. I want to actually see what the threshold is that it actually farts and restarts. I think it's somewhere around 2 or 3 volts. And we're at 0.8 already. And I bet you if I carefully play with the speaker connector, that's gnarly. Check this out. You can even see the subwoofer moving from this one. As I unplug it and plug it in, see that? And it looks like we're already at just about 1 volt. Oh, without a doubt, I can guarantee you this is the cause of the crash and restart. I've been able to reproduce this on demand. What you do is you just flip the board over, with it powered on, of course. Let me find another amp board. Here we go. All you need to do to reproduce the spike in voltage and the crash and restart is heat up these 4 capacitors, these 4 big ones right here. As soon as you start applying heat to these, you'll see your voltage jump very quickly, probably past a couple of volts, and it'll almost immediately fart and restart on you. I don't think this DC offset issue is going to cause any harm to the logic boards. I just don't think that. So the reason why I don't think that is because the audio signal coming from the logic board to the amplifier board is a digital signal. It's not the analog audio signal, it's digital. And then the amplifier board takes that digital audio signal, puts it through the DACs, puts it through the amps, makes it an analog audio signal, and pumps that into the speakers. So I think, I could be wrong, but I think the source of the DC offset and where it's at on the amp board is just too far removed from the logic board for that to cause any issues on the logic board, but I could be wrong. Who knows? We don't have schematics, so we'll probably never know. I do know the crash is caused by the amp board, yes. Well, we'll just keep talking while this continues to rise. But what happens is when the voltage in DC reaches past a certain point, it's either the DAC or the amp itself. One of those 2 chips on the amplifier board sees that there's too much DC bias on the audio signal for the speaker. It detects that, and that's why it forces a restart. I don't know if the amp board is communicating with the logic board and telling it to do that, or if the amp board just has something built in to just cut and restart the power, which forces a crash and restart. But yes, the DC offset is what causes your farts and restarts, your popping and restarts, that crash and restart. That is almost certainly always going to be coming from this. We're at 1.3 volts now. Let's go ahead and play some music. 1.39. We'll let that keep playing. You know what? Let's disconnect these really quick from the subwoofer. Let's pause that. We've still got a little time before that gets high enough to cause a restart. Let's see if we've got any DC on the tweeter. And there's your answer. No, the DC offset issue does not affect the tweeter speakers, and I'll tell you why. The DC offset itself is coming from, well, I don't know exactly what it's coming from, but what I do know is those filtering capacitors on the back here are supposed to remove that DC. And when these capacitors go bad, they get bad at keeping that DC from going through. So in between the DAC and the amp are those filtering capacitors. So what happens is the logic board sends the digital audio signal into the amp board. That digital audio signal is sent to the DAC here. And then from the DAC will actually convert that digital audio signal to an analog one. That's when it passes through your filtering here, and then it comes into your amplifier, where it is amplified. Now, the DAC and the amp right here, where the DC offset is coming from, I believe these are only for the subwoofer. Each tweeter has its own amplifier. So the subwoofer has the big amp IC chip here. Each tweeter is going to have its own little tiny amp IC. And all of those they're not connected to each other. So any bass problems that you have aren't going to affect any of your tweeter problems. What I don't know, the only thing I don't know, I think it's the one DAC on the board that converts the digital to analog audio for the sub and the 7 tweeters. So there's only one DAC on the board for all the speakers. But each speaker does have its own amplifier. So being that we only see DC offset on the subwoofer and none of the tweeters, one would presume that the offset is only affecting that, of course, that one speaker. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm no expert. Nobody has schematics. Nobody really knows. All right, we're at 1.62. Let's go ahead. I'm getting impatient because that's taken its sweet time. Let's flip this over. Very carefully. There we go. And watch what happens when I blow on those caps. Watch what happens to the voltage. See that? Now watch what happens when we heat those capacitors up. See that? We've got 2.3 volts, 2.5, 2.6. Honestly, I'm a little scared to push that even further. So I'm going to hazard a guess that at 3 volts or higher is when it will crash and restart. So let's go ahead, unplug this from power. Ooh! That was a pop! Let's unplug everything and get those capacitors replaced. And I've got my do not sell testing power supply installed here. I've actually cut a section of the plastic out here so that way I can keep the power supply installed while I replace the capacitors here without melting the plastic on the power supply. This is just my testing power supply. Makes my job just a little easier, so that way if I have to remove and reinstall a bunch of components, I don't have to remove and reinstall the power supply a bunch of times and put more wear and tear on the connectors. So let's go ahead, pull those caps off, get them replaced, and then we'll retest for DC offset. We're also just going to hit the other side of this board with a little bit of heat really quick. And let's jump into those caps. Alright, we got those caps removed. Let's clean up those pads. Break out some fresh capacitors. Very good. Excuse me. Let's get those new caps put on. One installed. Second one installed. Get some more flux on there for the third and fourth ones. Number 3 installed. And number 4 is installed. We get them all put on there. I would smoke those joints, 10 out of 10. Good looking joints. Now we just need to let that cool down for a minute. These are all the bad caps that I've replaced from HomePods that have come in. I don't know what I'll do with them, but maybe I'll throw some on some test boards and just do some death farts on camera for fun. This was actually my first one that I figured out. One of these two. And I've just been keeping all of them that I've been replacing. Not sure what I'll do with them. Alright, is that cooled down enough? Our power supply is still a little warm, so we'll let that cool for just another minute. We'll go ahead and clean this up while we're waiting. Alright, is that cooled down enough? It's cool enough for me. Let's give this another test. Alright, let's plug this into power and see what we got. Oh, I wonder what date code we've got on the diode. 1742K. Alright, we don't need to worry about replacing the diode. Yeah, you like that? Alright, we're booted up. The moment of truth. Beautiful. We started at negative 10 millivolts, which I mean is already an inconsiderable amount. And we are hovering at around 5. I bet you if we sit around for a little bit and wait, it'll probably go down to just 0. Lovely. Let's just make sure our base still works. Yep. And if we pause that again, we've still got essentially non-existent offset. So we've got this one fixed. Let's go ahead and throw it back together. And then we will factory reset. Well, actually, that one was already factory reset. We already set it up. We'll throw this one back together. And we will thoroughly test it reassembled to make sure that we've gotten rid of our death farts. Put our test supply back away. And let's break out our pod. Hey, what's up, Sam? Glad you could join us. And of course, it is always my pleasure to fix these pods up for other people. It's been quite enjoyable getting all these different pods in from all over the world and getting them all fixed back up for people. Like, I remember how excited I was when I fixed my first broken one for myself. That was a moment. And I thought to myself, wait, that was actually quite enjoyable. Why isn't anybody else doing this? Am I a masochist? Wonder if you could build a better HomePod with a 100-watt woofer instead of the 50-watt one. How many HomePods do you have in the room where you feel like it's not adequate? Because in the right size room, like a small bedroom, one HomePod has plenty of bass, for me at least. Never mind the 6 that I've got in my office, just in my office room alone. That is a whole different experience, let me tell you. But I feel like the performance overall in the HomePod is excellent. And if you're sticking it in a larger room, you probably need a couple to help fill that sound in a little bit. Because at the end of the day, yeah, it is kind of small. But I'm not sure that you're going to get a noticeable improvement in the bass just by cramming a higher wattage subwoofer in here. Because one of your main limiting factors is the size of the subwoofer and the enclosure that it's using to resonate its frequencies. So if you really wanted to get better bass out of your HomePod, really, you're gonna have to probably just make a bigger one. I mean, if you were to take the guts, the current guts of a HomePod and stick it in a bigger enclosure, you would get that would be probably the easiest way. If you just cram a higher wattage subwoofer in here, I don't know how well the amp for the subwoofer will handle that, because I think the amp's only rated for like 35 to 50 watts. So you would need to consider replacing the amp IC with one that's a higher wattage. And actually, the 4302, the IR4302M is basically the exact same amp IC that's used currently in the HomePods, but it's like rated for 95 or 100 watts. So in theory, you could drop that higher rated amp IC in, you could drop in a higher wattage subwoofer, and you might have better bass, but I still think you'd be limited by the actual size of the speaker and the HomePod's enclosure. Alright, we got all the screws in for the amplifier. Let's get our power supply back in here. Very good. Let's get this. Ooh, before we forget, let's put this back on. We do not want to have to tear this back down because we forgot this. Again. Alright, we got that top basket reinstalled. Let's get our screw covers put in and wrap this one up. Yeah, I feel that. I just use my shit. I just use it, and I learned how to fix it, so that way I don't have to worry about it if it breaks just by using it. But I mean, it's a pretty sad life for a product or a piece of technology to sit around and be unused because you're afraid of breaking it. I've got the mindset of just using the shit out of my shit until it falls apart, and keep fixing it until you can't fix it no more. And then when you can't fix it anymore, use it for parts to fix another one. At least in the HomePods case, I've only had to fix things on them once. You know, I've never had to fix one thing and then have one come back to fix another problem or the same problem again. But I mean, if you've got a bunch of HomePods just sitting around and you're not using them, then really what's the point? Use them. Use them the way that Apple designed them to be used, which is plugged in, powered on all the time. Pump the volume. Enjoy them. Get your enjoyment out of it instead of sitting there worrying about, you know, wasting all that time worrying about it breaking when you're not actually using it, you know? Easier for me to say because I've got, you know, all this experience taking them apart and putting them back together, but like I said, I think it's a pretty sad and unfortunate life that a lot of these just sit around unused because people are just too afraid to break them just by using them. And it's like, well, it's kind of like a nice car or like a collector's car. You can keep it in the garage all the time, keeping it nice and pretty, but, you know, is that a way to enjoy it? You're going to take it out for a drive. That's why I can't have nice things, because I beat the shit out of it all. But yeah, the only thing you really have to worry about is if they just start popping and crackling and having issues. I don't know if you catch my AirPlay menu whenever I test these pods, but I've lost count, probably over 20 online at any moment. And generally speaking, I never have any issues. The only time I do have issues is it usually ends up pointing to my Wi-Fi or internet. I love these things. I use them almost every single day for hours at a time. I have not heard the Sonos 5 in person yet. I really want to try it, but I just don't think it's going to be the same as a HomePod. If I remember correctly, it's only got a couple of tweeters and the one subwoofer speaker. And the Sonos 5 is not omnidirectional. So it's not something that really not something that really interests me. I like the HomePods because you can literally put them down pretty much anywhere and they'll sound great. You know, with exceptions being like if the room size and really stupid placements, but I saw somebody else put it really well. The Apple HomePod is the best sounding speaker in a incorrectly set up room. Sure, you can spend the money and build out a proper setup, or you can just buy a bunch of these and scatter them around the room. Call it good. I would like to hear the Sonos 5 in person though. And I wouldn't mind having one. Just as a, I love collecting speakers. So it doesn't really matter if it's good, bad, or otherwise. But it's just not something that I would see myself buying a bunch of and putting around the house, or even using as like a component to my main system in the living room. Maybe if I get the chance to hear it in person, I'll change my mind, but I think I've got a decent enough idea of the raw audio quality and a bit of the soundstage based on the audio samples from rtings.com. And I still honestly prefer the sound from the HomePods. It's just that staging sound, that like I don't know what it's called, like the separation of the instruments and all that. It sounds incredible compared to anything else. It depends on what exactly the issue is, but all of my repairs generally they start at $50 and they don't exceed $80 per HomePod. If you're sending the whole HomePod and you need me to take the whole HomePod apart and do the repairs, it starts at $50 and it caps out at $80 max. No repairs I do per single HomePod is going to be more than $80, at least for now. We'll see how the economy and life goes. But if you manage to take your HomePod apart and you've diagnosed what exactly needs to be repaired and you've got just the board that you want to send in, I give 50% off repairs for just the board. And I've got all the equipment already. I've got spare parts for everything to test anything that you send in that needs to be fixed. So, full price repair estimates are on my website, homepodrepair.com. And if you send in just the board, I give you half off. I think Apple discontinued them because they saw the shit show of issues coming and they said, nah, we're going to sweep this under the rug. And then, who knows? Who knows about the rumors of the new ones? We'll see if any of that's actually true. That's complete speculation based on no evidence yet. I did leave a comment in the Reddit thread where that popped up about the new HomePod models being rumored. I think it's a good thing. If Apple ends up releasing a new version of the HomePod with minimal design changes, hopefully that would give us certain, they would bring back certain parts into production, like the cosmetic parts. Obviously the cosmetic parts, you can't really repair the top touch surface, the mesh. So when those break or get damaged, they're done, and there's no replacements available. So it would be really nice to see them release a new HomePod with minimal changes, with parts that are compatible with the old models, so that way we can not only, of course, fix up the new ones, as of course people will have issues with those and break those, but so we can also refurbish and keep old ones going again too, because at the end of the day, they're phenomenal. I keep saying it over and over again, but even at full MSRP, where else are you going to find a speaker with 7 dedicated tweeters, a subwoofer, omnidirectional sound, smart home integration with Siri, and basically an iPhone 6 crammed inside with dedicated amplifiers for every single speaker? You're not going to find anything else like that anywhere. I don't even know if you can pay, like, I don't even above the same price as the HomePod. Good luck finding anything that's like this. The closest thing that I can think of is called the SingCell Alpha, and it's pretty similar to the HomePod. And as a matter of fact, I think the original designers of the HomePod went on to create the SingCell Alpha, and that speaker is roughly the same size as the HomePod. It's got the 1 subwoofer, and it's got 3 omnidirectional tweeters. So I think it's like $1,000, somewhere around there. Ridiculously expensive. But even then, the hardware in the HomePod, I think, has got it beat, because you've got more speakers. I don't know. I haven't heard the SingCell Alpha in person. I'd really like to. So, we've got this one powered on. Of course, let's go ahead and test it and make sure that it's nice and sealed and that our volume buttons are lined up properly. Volume buttons are lined up really nice. I don't hear any problems with the seal. I think we are good. We'll go ahead and let that play for a few minutes. At this point, the stream, we're pretty much done. We've got both HomePods fixed up. I'm just gonna let this play for a few minutes on some heavy bass songs, just to make sure that this doesn't pop and restart, and that we've certainly got that all nice and fixed up. You're welcome to hang out if listening to audio being played on a speaker and then streamed over YouTube through a microphone is your fancy. Otherwise, thank you for joining, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Alright. I'm going to keep testing this one off camera. Apparently more than one device is trying to play, whatever. If you're still around, thanks for watching. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!